What's going on, everyone? If you're the type of person that's going to let a group of 56 grown men judge your mood for the next 6 to 8 months, then this is the place to be. I am Scott Schaus, and this is Turf Talk. So, guys, week 1 is just right around the corner. Preseason has just kicked off. Training camps is going on. We're going to have final cuts here in the next few weeks, and we are officially past the halfway mark of our division breakdown. Last week, I did the NFC North, the toughest division in football, where I had the Bears going back-to-back. If you want any recap or anything on what you missed, you can catch me on your favorite podcast channels, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube. I am there. Just make sure you hit that follow button after you're done. So this week, we are going to jump into the AFC West. Yeah, this is a division that's got pretty much teams that are in all shapes and sizes, from rebuilds to the hopeful Super Bowl contenders here. And as everybody knows, I like to start from the bottom and work my way up with last year's standings, and then we're gonna do new standings at the end of the episode. So with that being said, let's dive into it. Division breakdown. First off, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. Pretty much it's their... What can we say about this team? Every year, new head coach. So they fired Pete Carroll after one season, 17 games in. They didn't do too hot, as pretty much everyone expected. They finished last year with the 32nd total offense, only averaging 245.2 yards per game. They couldn't hold the door open. This offensive line couldn't hold the door open for Ashton Jeanty, let alone open up a running lane for him. As I would say, most of his yards came after contact. But from a numbers standpoint, he didn't have too bad of a rookie year. He had a little bit over 1,200 yards of scrimmage, 10 total touchdowns, and that's off of terrible blocking. That's really all we could sum it up to, is that they were terrible in the run game, terrible on offense. Geno Stone led the league in interceptions last year, posted a 30 QBR. They were just bad all the way around. But with that being said, that's how they landed the number 1 overall pick, in which they used on Indiana quarterback and Heisman Trophy winner Fernando Mendoza. And as far as his number 1 pick goes, what has been a lot of the issue with these young quarterbacks coming into the league? Brady hit us.
You're assuming that everybody knows how to develop a quarterback. You're assuming that you're going into a program. I mean, I'm telling you, there's a lot of people who have no idea what they're doing when they're tasked with coaching a quarterback or calling an offense. So are you saying, just like we'd rank quarterbacks 1 to 32, do you rank offensive coordinators 1 to 32? Do you rank quarterback coaches 1 to 32? Well, what if you have the 32nd ranked coordinator in someone's mind, or the 32nd ranked quarterback coach? How is he getting a level of development that the guy who's first is getting?
And that's pretty much what it is. He has urged the Raiders that he wants Mendoza to sit until he is ready, and it sounds like, and so to me, Brady ain't gonna be down there coaching him his damn self. I don't know how much ready he can get. Clint Kubiak did have Seattle's offense looking pretty good last year. So with that being said, Kirk Cousins was named the Week 1 starter after the first day of training camp. He's been getting all the first team reps. And really, the big storyline here with that is that he got into a recent scuffle with Max Crosby in camp, and I love it. Allegedly, Kirk he grabbed a hold of Kirk grabbed a hold of his jersey, and it wasn't Kirk that came out that he had a scuffle with. That was Kirko. Kirko came out, and Max Crosby found out that he's not going to be able to just push around. Obviously, if he wanted to, I think he would have dumped Kirk Cousins on his head, but Kirk's not going to be the one to be pushed around. Kirko came out, baby. And really, speaking of Max Crosby, that's the huge, big story surrounding this offseason, is that a trade fell through, thank the Lord, to the Baltimore Ravens after they essentially backed out after sending 2 first-round picks to the Raiders for Max Crosby. And after what they went and did in free agency, you looked at the defense that they went overhauled in the free agency. I believe they spent the most money on their defense this past year, going and getting they went and got all the old former Georgia boys. They went and got everybody that I'm about to name off. All got 3-year deals. So we have Kwity Paye with 3-year, $48 million. Quay Walker got $40.5. Nakobe Dean got $36. Wide receiver Jalen Naylor got 3 years for $35. So they overhauled this defense, and it was highlighted by free agency by signing the best center in free agency this year, which was Tyler Linderbaum. And I think that is going to open up this offense and help create some holes right up there at the A gap for Ashton Jeanty to exploit and actually be what he was drafted to be, and that's to be the anchor of this defense, or the anchor of this offense. Sorry, excuse me. So you look at what they go and do in free agency, and then they get Mad Max back. Now all of a sudden, this defense looked from average to like, this could be a good defense, guys. It's going to be the offense that's going to have to is what needs figured out. So I'm excited to see what the Raiders are going to do this year. I think they're going to be a lot better than what people think. I don't think they're going to. I still not sure if they're going to win a whole lot of games, but I think they might be in a game or two this year that they should be. Key losses. They lost guard Dylan Parham, and they sent Geno Smith to where most quarterbacks die, and that's where he was drafted, was to the Jets. And reportedly he has not looked good in camp, but that's a discussion for another day. Their draft was really just trying to overhaul the defense. It looks like they're looking to fix the defense first before they try to address the offense, and maybe that's a little bit why Brady wants Mendoza to sit out for a little bit, because again, there's just no development in this game. They want these young quarterbacks to come in and get thrown into the fire after most of them have gone to the transfer portal three to four times, and they've never really had a chance to develop their skills and to be able to figure out really who they are before they come into the league. And that's what Brady wants. That Brady doesn't want to waste this opportunity. He wants to prove that you can, with the right coaching and the right development, Mendoza is going to be that guy. So they brought in, like I mentioned, head coach Clint Kubiak. This is their sixth head coach since 2021. There was the one that I think that got away from was Steve Bisacci, Rick Bisacci. Coach Bisacci is the one that got away. I think you can't tell me that after that 2021 season when you had a dumpster fire where you had the Gruden emails come about. I think that was the Henry Ruggs season, if I'm not mistaken. So after all that, and they still made the playoffs, and they haven't made the playoffs since then. And they brought in Josh McDipshit, is what I like to call him. So I think Bisacci is the one that got away. So you bring in Clint Kubiak, he brings in first offensive coordinator Andrew Janocko and defensive coordinator Rob Leonard, and they retained their GM John Spytek after the Pete Carroll firing. So the big question here about this is what is this team planning to do in the future? Not necessarily this year. What's the future gonna look like? Because they've already overhauled the defense. They brought in Tyler Linderbaum, but this offensive line still has questions. They don't have a true number one. I think Jalen Naylor could break into like a wide receiver 2 type of role, but unless they're just gonna look at Brock Bowers as being their number one, but. They still need a guy that can take the top off the defenses, and they just don't have that right now. The draft pick that I'm going to go ahead and highlight, and I think it's going to be the obvious one here that a lot of you guys followed, is the Jermont McCoy pick. He fell to the 4th round after being projected early on throughout his collegiate career to be one of the first corners taking off the board come draft time, and he tore his ACL during the college football playoffs. And with that being said, he kind of fell, but and when he gets back to form and gets back there, this could be one of the steals of the draft. Really, just be patient because you might as well be. The Raiders just aren't in a position to win this year, so I think this is really just a developmental year. To see what they got, which in my opinion should be what a lot of head coaches that come into situations like this. That first year should just be a survey year. Let me see what I have and let me see what I need to go address and go work on. And on to really the surprise team that missed the playoffs last year was the Kansas City Chiefs. Their 9 straight seasons of winning that division, of being AFC West champions, came to an end after Rashee Rice served that 6-game suspension, and he but I will say that as soon as he came back and immediately took back over and was getting peppered with targets. But then, outside of that, Travis Kelce seemed to have just keep slowing down. It was the defense anchored them. They lost a lot of one-possession games this past year. They were 1-9 in one-possession games, 1-7 on the road. Points for was 362. Point against was 328. So the defense just really, offense really put defense in a lot of bad situations. The defense was kind of like the anchor. They started out 0-2, but then they was able to climb their way back up to 5-3, and then it just all went kind of downhill from there. They were swept by the Chargers for the first time since 2013, and the Broncos since 2014. So, and then they were mathematically eliminated from a Week 15 home loss to the Chargers, and to add insult to injury, that was the same game Mahomes tore his ACL. So not only were you eliminated from the playoffs, your franchise quarterback's ACL was also eliminated. So it was just a really bad season for Chiefs fans. For the bright spot, though, they did have a 31-0 Week 7 shutout week for against the Raiders. So I guess if you're going to look at anything to be a bright spot, you can always look at that. Like, the Raiders are still there to be able to get picked on. And even after only having missing Rashee Rice for the first 6 weeks of the season, he still put up 3,587 yards, 22 touchdowns to 11 picks. I mean, his picks were higher than normal, but when you're behind, you got to sling the pill. So you had to throw the rock more. And the Chiefs receivers, especially like Hollywood Brown, his hands sometimes just non-existent. And without having Rashee Rice and an older Travis Kelce, you're just throwing to a bunch of wide receiver threes at this point. Mahomes also became the fastest player in NFL history to reach 300 career touchdown passes. It only took him 139 games. And then their big free agent signing, to me, after their running game was also non-existent, and they've been going through a backfield committee really since Clyde didn't pan out and Kareem Hunt decided he wanted to be a kicker instead of a running back. They went and signed a splash in free agency, which was Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker. And they signed him to a 3-year, $43 million deal. And he led the NFL with a 91.5 PFF rushing grade and had 42 explosive runs and 77 forced missed tackles. And this is coming, and it's awesome to see, too, because I had Kenneth Walker losing his job to Zach Charbonnet going into last year. I believed he was one bad injury off from losing that job, and because I just thought Charbonnet just looked better. But you look at it, especially in hindsight. As soon as Charbonnet went down, Kenneth Walker just took off, and now he's going to be running behind All Pro center Creed Humphrey this year. So that's going to be huge for him. So I expect Kansas City's offense to get right back to where it was from past years. I'm not going to say it's going back to 2018, 2019 explosion, but I expect to have the Chiefs see a bounce back season because Mahomes I just don't foresee them missing the playoffs 2 years in a row. But outside of the Kenneth Walker signing, they went and got Alohi Gilman. He's gonna be the Brian Cook replacement because he came home. 3 years, 24.75 million. Defensive end Emmanuel Ogball comes back on a 1-year deal. They're bringing in Amari Demercado, the guy that likes to drop footballs at the goal line, or else I think he would have been able to keep that, to at least keep a little bit of the bulk of the touches had he not done that. He also cost my brother a fantasy football matchup that he did. They did bring back Travis Kelce and Tyquan Thornton. Tyquan Thornton did have a career high. He had a career high 68.4 receiving yards per game, and then 0 drops on 36 catchable targets. And so he was really like the security blanket that Mahomes needed, with Rashee Rice being on suspension and Travis Kelce slowing down. Their big key losses here, though, is that clearly they don't like paying their corners because the last 2 elite cornerbacks that they've moved off of. But I guess if you can draft and develop them, why not? Because they sent off Trent McDuffie to the Rams in return for their first, 5th, and a 2027 3rd. So they got a pretty nice little haul out of McDuffie. They got the 29th overall pick, and in which they used that on defensive tackle Peter Woods out of Clemson. And that's going to help bulk up that defensive line. And they're preparing for the retirement of Chris Jones with that pick. So I just expect that Kansas City defense and Steve Spagnuolo to have these boys in tip-top shape. And they're preparing for the future with this. And then after the firings of John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin with his resignation, that now makes Andy Reid going into year 14 the most longest tenured head coach with current franchises. He's bringing back offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy after Matt Nagy's contract expired. And the big story behind Bieniemy was his. I'm glad she's able to make a full recovery, but Bieniemy's wife was actually shot by their son over some dispute. I'm not sure what kind of dispute he must have gotten into to be able to pull the trigger on his mom, but hey, that's the world we live in. I don't know if he's, I'm not going to sit here and make assumptions about anything. We're not here to do that. We're here to talk turf. And speaking of that Peter Woods that I just mentioned just a few moments ago, he's the talk of training camp right now. And he's been praised by George Karlaftis, Trey Smith, and Creed Humphrey. So to be able to get praise from top tier linemen and your teammates going into your rookie year after you're a back end first round pick, that's going to be, like I said, they're preparing for the future, and I think this defense is going to be bright, going to be nice, and going to be. The bright side is if the offense can just put up some points and consistently, like I said, the Chiefs will come back to win in 11, 12 games. Their big draft story here is they traded up for LSU cornerback Mansour Delane. They traded up 3 spots with him to get him. A lot of people didn't think they needed to. I personally thought that if there was a team that would have sniped him from that they would have got sniped from, that it would have been Washington. But they ended up making that move to get up and get their Trent McDuffie replacement. And Washington ended up taking Sonny Styles, who's going to be a freak of nature if his intangibles can develop into football in the NFL. And so then with that being said, we are going to mosey on up to the California team. We're going to mosey on to the Bolts, the LA Chargers. So after having one of the better defenses in the NFL last year, they had the 12th total offensive yardage wise, but only the 20th scoring offense at 21.6 points per game, and that to me is that has a lot to do with Justin Herbert not having Rashawn Slater or Joe Alt Slater didn't play at all last year, and Alt missed a lot of time. And from what the clips that I'm seeing in camp, Joe Alt's going to be right back to where he was. Bully, just being Joe Alt elite is what if he can get his Pro Bowl tackle keep him upright. I expect Herbert to come back to form. But with that being said, you need to be able to keep this man upright because they don't have the receivers that Cincinnati does to be able to help alleviate some of that pressure with getting beat up all the time. 55 sacks, 54 sacks. He was up there with Cam Ward and Geno Smith in terms of sacks and pressures. He was like the fourth most pressured quarterback, and he was the most hit quarterback. He thrown on the ground almost 106 times. And it's like I said the same thing. It's like I say with these quarterbacks that get hit like this. They're not gonna last. I can't sit here and call a quarterback that just gets thrown on the ground and they get beat up, injury prone. So, for a guy, Herbert broke the same hand twice last year against the same team at that. Fractured his left hand, ended up needing surgery. He ended up playing through it, but that's just what happens. It's in the sense of like, if you drop your phone more times than I do, your phone's gonna have dents, cracks, a busted screen in it, and eventually it's gonna stop working. You take anything that was made on God's green earth and you throw it on the ground enough times, it's gonna break. I don't care what it is. And obviously, with the exception of a few things, before some of the smart asses come out of time, what about this? No. They brought in Mike McDaniel after firing Greg Roman. Mike McDaniel had one of the most explosive offenses in the league with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Tua down in Miami, and he knows how to draw up some plays. I just don't think he's like head coach. I think he's he's offensive genius. Like, he knows how to draw up a play, but he's not. I think for a head coach, you got to have some type. You got to bring the culture, and he's just not a culture guy. He's not the guy that's going to come in and set the tone. You look at him, he's a dweeb, but he's an offensive genius. I will give him that. So that's going to be looking to get an offense that, like I just said a minute ago, that was 12th in yards but 20th in scoring. They're gonna this Chargers offense is going to look to get more points on the board this year. And then with that being said, they had they had a top five defense that they did have last year. They lost their defensive coordinator to Baltimore after they had some defensive problems and some injuries last year. So we're looking to see what this defense is going to look like. I personally think it's going to be all right as long as they have Jim Harbaugh there. Sorry, yeah, sometimes I get them mixed up, but they still got old Jimbo over there. They extended Derwin James and made him the highest paid safety in NFL history. They gave him 3 years for $75.6 million, 25.2. That's his average. He signed that on May 26th this year. Their key signings, they brought in center Tyler Badaz, who just got hurt in training camps, and he's expected to be out for a few weeks. They brought in Charlie Kohler from Baltimore. They signed guard Cole Strange to a 2-year, $13 million. They brought in Keaton Mitchell for running back depth, so he goes from one Harbaugh to the other. Defensive tackle Dalvin Tomlinson, they brought him in for depth at the D tackle spot, and the signing that I think that's flying under the radar right now is the David Njoku. I think they're going to be able to run some nice 2 tight end sets with him and Arondé Gadsden, who showed a lot of good things last year as the tight end 1 for the Chargers. And then Khalil Mack came back surprisingly. A lot of people thought this might have been the last year for him, but he came back on a 1-year that's worth up to $18 million. They lost Odafe Owe to Washington. Zion Johnson went to Cleveland. Tyler Conklin, he's really just like a fill-in tight end anyway. He went to Detroit to be their fill-in tight end. And then with their first-round pick, they took edge rusher Akeem Massador from Miami, and then they also took another center, Jake Slaughter, out of Florida. So they're trying to again rebuild that offensive line. It's probably a good thing they took a day 2 center after that. After their starting center just got hurt, that they just brought in for 3 years, $30 million. And then they're still not really expected to have Rashawn Slater. I said His week 1 status is in jeopardy. He's missed 5 straight practices here. He's had some a knee flare up where the knee injury that kept him out last year, and so now you're missing your utility lineman because when he came to the league he could play any position on the line really. And so the big story, and so that now. For me, it's going to be the theme of this year should be keep Herbert up. You gotta make sure he stays upright so he can make the big plays and go through his progressions. You're not gonna be able to get through his progressions if he's constantly under fire. Like I just mentioned a second ago, he's got Ladd and Quentin Johnston, but they don't have the receivers that Cincinnati does to be able to try to make up for poor offensive line play. And even then, that only works out for so long because, like I just said, you can't get thrown on the ground and expect to be able to make it out, make a career out of it. That's why it's only happened one time where the most sacked quarterback went to the NFL went to the Super Bowl. That's only happened once, and it's probably never going to happen again. And then on to the division winners. With the Denver Broncos, who was just one game out of making their first Super Bowl since 2015, since the Peyton Manning era, and it came out of a freak accident where Bo Nix tore his ankle up on the second to last play of the game, and they ended up having Jarrett Stidham start in a snowstorm in the AFC Championship game. I mean, either way, they would have got routed by Seattle, but. But you got to be in it to win it, I guess. So they had, to me, but regardless, they had a cakewalk in the AFC this year. But you still got to give props to the teams that get there, in my opinion, because we're not going to sit here and roast because you can't sit here and roast them just because it's just the hand they were dealt. Like Josh, I'm kind of getting off topic here, but like Josh Allen, he got kicked out, or he's getting hell right now because there's no Mahomes, no Burrow, no Lamar, and you lost. But if he would have made it all the way there and won, to me, they would have just pointed at that. Well, y'all go figure the year that Mahomes isn't there, Josh Allen finally gets one. Now we got to see you do it with these guys. So either way, there would have been a narrative to pick on him. So, but now I officially digress on that. They had Denver had one of the best defenses in the league last year. Points for, they had 400. Points against was 311. I believe they were second in the league in sacks as a team. They were the first or second. Can't remember off the top of my head. It's between them and Houston. Their defensive lines were really just out of this world last year. So like I said, they lost in the AFC Championship game 7-10. There was a real questionable fourth down call right there, where Sean Payton decided to go for it, and it was just a bad call in my opinion because points were coming out of premium in that game. You didn't have your starting quarterback. You couldn't move the ball, and they were in field goal position, and they went for it, and they ended up getting the ball losing the game 7-10. Last year they had 9 consecutive comeback wins, which was, they said, an NFL record that was highlighted by a 33-point comeback win against the New York Football Giants. A 33-point comeback is insane, but to me, but I'm also going to point out that's a team you never should have been down 33-10 to, especially with that defense. But that's why, in certain instances like that, that's why Giants fans should be excited about the future that they have with Jackson Dart. I think Jackson Dart's going to be a really good quarterback. They had the best offensive line in the league last year. The Broncos did, after left tackle Garrett Bowles and right guard Quinn Miners were first team All-Pro, and then they also had Zach Allen, who made first-team All-Pro as well. And then also they have a 41-year-old Marcedes Lewis became the oldest tight end to ever play. So they made history. They made a couple different little minor things in history, but I guess it's worth noting to me. They had the 14th best offense this past season at 23.6 points per game. And even though when J.K. Dobbins got down or got hurt, to me they were never really they couldn't really establish a run game. R.J. Harvey had the explosive plays, but he only averaged like 3.7 yards per carry after Dobbins went down, and there was actually a couple of different times where I seen Dobbins get them down to the to like the 2 or 3 yard line, and Sean Payton all of a sudden decides he wants to quit running the ball. So there were some questionable decisions on there. And speaking of Sean Payton, they ended up giving him an extension. He signed a 5-year extension this past offseason. And then the big highlight of this year is the trade that they made, because their free agency their free agency was non-existent. They're the only team in the NFL that actually didn't sign an outside free agent. All their signings came from in-house, and the one outside move that they made was they sent their first-round pick over to the Dolphins for Jalen Waddle. And I think adding Jalen Waddle to this offense that's going to help open up this offense a lot, because I think he showed that he could be a number one with the right situation. I think Jalen Waddle is going to have a big year. So again, I'm excited. I'm excited for football, guys. It's that time of the year. Most wonderful time of the year. I mean, they're re-signing. So the only reason one analyst said the only reason that their free agent signing wasn't an F this year is because they was able to retain a lot of their talent, such as J.K. Dobbins, Alex Singleton, Adam Trotman, Jaquan McMillan, who's the one that ended up with the ball with the controversial pick in the AFC divisional game against Josh Allen that essentially kept their season alive. They also actually restructured Quinn Miner's deal, and to be able to help open up some cap space, because they got some heavy contracts. They got some decent contracts on the book and some guys that are coming up that are looking to get paid. Especially if Bo Nix comes out and has a big year, he's gonna want some cheese. Now the one draft pick that I'm excited for is it's like I mentioned in the NFC East episode, is that there's a lot of running backs that fell due to not necessarily the need, but the undervalued of the position being undervalued. I like the running back that they drafted in the fourth round at pick 108, which was Jonah Coleman. So if J.K. Dobbins goes down, it's Jonah Coleman that I'm liking. It's not necessarily R.J. Harvey. He looked more explosive in the passing game, right? Like screenplays. He just couldn't run between. He can't run between the tackles. Every time he gets the ball, he wants to try to bounce it outside. I think Jonah Coleman's going to bring that style that they need if Dobbins were to go down again. Which, if history tells, he will. I don't ever wish injury on anybody, but if there's anybody that I would like to be able to see get a full season out of anybody, it's J.K. Dobbins. Because it's like to me. And it's like every time he goes down, it's like he's the one that's always counted out, and he's the one that always seems to come out and show that he can still tote the pill. He can push the rock if he needs to. And then, alrighty, guys, I think it's gonna be about that time of the day. It's time to get these guys ranked. At number 4, we're gonna have the Raiders. Because, like I mentioned earlier in the episode, I don't think the Raiders are really going to be looking to win anything this year. I think this is an evaluation season to see what they have, and really time for Mendoza to develop into a franchise quarterback and not get thrown into the fire. This needs to be a season where Clint Kubiak and Brady and everybody really evaluate like what they have, because they fixed the defense. We're looking to see what this offense is going to look like. I think they're going to hang around in some games that they shouldn't. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to translate to wins. So give me the Raiders at number 4. At number 3, I gotta say that I gotta go with the Chargers, because the offensive line is still going to be a little bit shaky. They haven't really upgraded. If Joe Alt can stay healthy, that's going to play a huge part in protecting the blind side for Justin Herbert. But having Rashawn Slater gone, that's gonna still banged up unless he can The only way I see them really going up for winning this division or even really cutting it close is if they can keep Herbert upright. And then at number 2, I'm gonna go ahead and say the Chiefs. The Chiefs are gonna come in second place in this division. I think Mahomes is gonna bounce back. I do think Travis Kelce, he might still have a little bit left in the tank. He said he claims he can still play at a high level. Do I think he's coming back and is his 1,300 yards, double-digit touchdown? Them days are behind him, but he's still a quality, serviceable tight end that can still make the plays and still do what he needs to do to be able to put himself in a position to win. I think it's still going to be a lot of the same as the last couple of years. I see him making the plays that's gonna keep the chains moving. I don't see him making these big splash plays, but he's gonna still be heavily involved in this offense. So, with that being said, this is it's a weird division for me. So I think it really could go either way. But I'm gonna have the Broncos go ahead and take this back to back because Bo Nix is gonna be coming back. They went and grabbed Jalen Waddle. I do think Jonah Coleman is gonna maybe eventually step up as the number 1 back. And if anything happens to J.K. Dobbins, and just the defense is just real, man. They got one of the best defensive lines in the league, arguably the best corner in the league with Pat Surtain. And then Jalen Waddle is just gonna open this offense. It's gonna crack the code here. I think Bo Nix is gonna have a big season, barring as long as his ankles can stay together. So give me the Denver Broncos to go back to back. All right, that's gonna wrap it up, guys. Let me know what you think. Let me know what I did wrong. Let me know what I did right. Make sure you hit that follow button, like, comment, share, follow. I'm out of here, guys. See you next week.